For example, this church. So at times, I showed you that slide earlier of yin and yang, it's all about balance. It's not about light levels, it's about the difference in light levels, because what the important thing is you need to create bright spaces and you need to create dim spaces, because it is in bright spaces that you can do activities, but it is in dim spaces that you meet yourself. It is in places where things are not bright, it is in places where things are not speaking to you loudly that you have a chance to reflect upon yourself. So this is a really important thing about light, and it's been understood for thousands of years. The way that we build our houses traditionally has always understood about the role of light. In this case, this is a Sri Lankan house, but it's a very common form of a house in South Asia. The center of the, well, not only South Asia, also in Arabia, but the center of the house is a courtyard which is flooded with light, and in that courtyard things happen. There might be cooking, there might be working, cleaning, all sorts of things happen in the center of the courtyard where there's lots of light. And then with the very, very deep verandas, shadows are created so that inside it's cooler and it's darker. And the further you move away from that central courtyard, it gets darker and darker. So space is communal in the middle where there's lots of light, and as you move away into dimmer spaces, life becomes more private. So you can see people have understood this. Japanese people have also understood that in their houses. They've used screens. Okay, they don't have quite the same in Northern Asian people. They don't have quite the same intensity of light and heat, but they use screens to filter light. And as you move into the center of a Japanese house, there are more and more screens between you and daylight, and the light levels drop. And this has affected, Japanese theater. It's affected Japanese art. If you have a look at the contrast in their art and the contrast in theater styles like no theater, you can see that light has actually shaped their culture, and they've understood about the balance between light and dark. And this guy wrote really well about it. If any of you have read this book, that's good. If you haven't, you should get it. It's a very small book, very easy to read. Tanizaki talks exactly about what I've said about how light can affect the way you relate to people and the way you reflect upon yourself. So if we take all of that and we move into our practice of lighting design, suddenly you realize that things like this table actually have very little importance. So these are the things that lighting engineers and clients expect us to deliver. But in reality, it's not what we're delivering. It's just something that we might have to consider. It's about light levels, right? Next slide. Light levels, if you want to create a high light level, can create spaces like this, which might be great if you're sitting for 15 minutes in a food court with your friends and you're eating lunch. But lighting can be so much more complex than that. So I don't want you to focus on just the amount of light. And it's one of the reasons why I don't agree with using computer rendered models or computer rendered plans to generate design. It doesn't generate design, it just tells you how much light there is. What generates design is contrast. Now I'm going to go through a few things what I think are important about light. Contrast, color, reflection, and interaction with materials, and also light direction. So this is a very even lighting. Go forward. The next two slides are also even lighting, but they tell another story. Right? Here, actually in this space, this is daytime space and the nighttime space. It's the same building. This is downstairs, this is upstairs. There's a large skylight that comes down through here and fills the light with space. So the cafe during the day is very bright and evenly lit for people that might go there for breakfast or a quick cup of coffee or whatever. But at nighttime, it evolves into this image on the left that you see. Actually, there's only two downlights in this whole project. The project is lit with uplights at the back, which bounce off the space, back and front, which you can't see the front, obviously that's where the camera is, and then each table is lit. So yes, it's an even lit space, but contrast is starting to be created, or your eye can tell what are the important things at night time because the light is focused on the table. Even in bathrooms you can do that. You don't have to put a grid of downlights in a bathroom. You can create the light where, or put the light where the focus is, which is at the vanity. Or you can make patterns with light. Even in retail you can create contrast. And of course this is what's used in the film industry. Creating focus, creating contrast gives focus. So in theatre and film, this is used a lot. Contrast is a very important thing. Contrast ratios. Now our work, we should be working at a minimum contrast ratio of 1:3, even up to 1:10 to create focal points of light. So for instance, Indiana Jones there on the left, he would have a very high contrast ratio, maybe 1:20 or 1:50 that they use in theatre. Whereas this one here is more like a 1:10 focus of contrast level. You can see by using contrast where the focal point is. It attracts your eye. This is a very important thing in terms of generating space and promoting activity. So in this project, you remember the image about the fire that I showed you with the children sitting around. All of you, I'm sure, have sat around a fire at some time in your life. It's the focal point. It gives warmth, it's the center, you all face it and you communicate with the people around you. Exactly the same idea in this restaurant. This was the first time that we had generated or designed the battery-powered table lamp. And in this restaurant, the focus is at each table. Because the space is so grand, because the view outside of the space is so good, we wanted to control all the reflections in the glass. So we put all the light or focus the light on the table. Exactly the same way that you might sit around a fire. Groups of diners can sit around a table. The light level is on them and on their faces, and the light levels drop off past their shoulders. So they know where the focal point is. People are drawn into conversations. Exactly the same as this. Look where people's light, or where the light is. It's all on everyone's faces. So that's about using contrast to create focal point. One of the other great tools we can use is light direction. And again, this is used a lot in theatre, as you can see. In this case, backlighting, which creates long shadows. In the theatre industry, this is called key light, which is using the light at a very low angle and washing across. Another example here. You can see by using light direction, you can start to cast shadows. Now, this is something that can give a very great dramatic effect. It's a difficult thing to do in architecture because it can also create glare, but if you do it in places where people are moving, then the glare effects are nullified because you're moving through the space. This is a project that Ned and I worked on, and in this case you can see the use of low angles of light to create shadow, both creating the focal point, which is the entry, but also coming from behind you to create pattern and shadow. This was taken during construction, but you can see the idea of the light. This is a fashion shoot, but this is the ballroom in W. Again, the long raking line of light to create contrast, to create focal point, and just to create drama. Spaces don't have to be flat, they can have their own personality. Personality can be given by uplighting. In a way that's similar, when you rely on, I'm going to simplify this a little bit. When you rely on light direction and use one light direction, for instance side lighting or uplighting, the effect can be very dramatic. For example, this. Where you start to use multiple light directions, it can soften the effect. But still the predominant one is uplighting. So uplighting is nice because you can reflect the ceiling, which creates a softer ambience of light, because then the light that falls on you and the people around you is reflected off the ceiling. So if the ceiling's nice and warm, like a timber ceiling, you get lovely warm light reflecting off everybody. People look great under reflected light because it's soft. Doesn't create dramatic shadows, particularly on your face. So in this case, we used uplighting to create a very soft, welcoming atmosphere. What was the concept of the project? Well, it was to create an oasis in the city. This project is on Sukhumvit Soi 1, but actually it kind of feels like it's in Phuket when you're there. Because the light is very warm, the light is very soft, and there's also a lot of light built into the landscape. Okay. So that's light direction.